like there was this burning house and I was trying to point to it and shout and like make people aware, but everyone else couldn't see it. And that made me think, like, what other things in society do we just assume some given truth about and don't actually question? Like, what elephants in the room don't we see?
Plastic pollution is a consequence of a massive overconsumption of plastic that's been going on since the 1950s. And the curve, it just goes up, straight up. It's insane how much plastic is produced these days.
The whole idea of a growth-oriented society is also that we need to always grow consumption. And to do that, you need to be unhappy with what you have. That's the basic idea. To buy a new phone, you need to be unhappy with what you have. So I think a lot of energy in society is actually directed towards making us unhappy with what we have and wanting something else instead of being content and enjoy what we have, or enjoy each other instead of material things.
We have become so separated from the food we grow. Lots of kids or people have no idea about seasonality or where plants grow, what they look like. And I think a lot of people really want to reconnect with that again. I think there's a growing interest to sustain yourself, to have a little production, to grow food for yourself. There's a big resilience in that.
Food waste is an issue because basically a huge amount of resources go into producing the food, which then, imagine all the steps, all the efforts and resources that has been thrown out. Or if you look at where your food comes from, I bet you half of the fruit and vegetables don't come from Europe. So they've also been shipped the whole way across the world just to end up in the bin.
What we see today is a new form of climate skepticism, which is more based on acknowledging and actually having the right narrative on how severe the damages from the climate crisis are and how much we need to act, but not actually doing anything about it. And I think that is the biggest difficulty right now, because a lot of people, they hear the politicians talk about how much they need to do and how important it is, but we're still waiting to see like the really fundamental changes in society that are necessary in order to make this green transition.
The seed doesn't know that it's going to become a flower. And it might be really scary for the seed to coming from the soil to the surface. But would it stay a seed, or would it take the courage to grow and to become a flower? I don't know.
I come from a very apolitical home in the countryside, and this idea that we would make a demo was kind of crazy. But we did that, we signed the demo up with the police, and in the morning at 7 in the morning we stood outside this glass building where all the officials came in. And I think it was in winter, it was super cold and dark, and we were like 7 people with banners that were way too big for like the few of us to hold. But still a couple of them came talk to us, and being at that door was like everyone saw us and noticed us. And that was really, for me, the first experience of like, whoa, I can actually go do something. Like, I can have an opinion. I can sign up a demo. Like, I can talk to these people and I can matter. I think before that, it was more this idea that, politics and these issues, someone else is taking care of that and I'm just the listener kind of, or observer. But that was really the first experience for me. Like, 7 people, a cold morning. It was nothing. But it was the experience that, hey, I can be active in this and I matter. Yeah.
Once you've completed university, it's the highway to a desk job, and I just knew that I didn't want to do that. So of course I got it anyway, and I spent a couple of years at a desk until my son asked me, like, what do you do, mum? And I was like, I work on a computer. And I thought to myself, how sad is this? My job is on a computer. And I quit. And then I spent a year figuring out what to do. So that was my journey to here.
I remember when I was an intern here, we went to visit an organic farm, and because of the drought in the summer 2018, the onions were really small, like way too small. And the supermarkets said that they didn't want to buy them because of the size, which was not like standard size. And I remember being super mad. I was like, how can it be possible that we don't want to buy onions just because they're too small? And there was my supervisor who told me, keep that anger. That's the motivation, like this feeling, you have to stuck to it, because this is through, for example, anger that you can actually fight against something.
My interest for food is also my desire to leave a better planet than I was born into. To maximize my time here to do something better for the planet.
The way it works, it's really easy. We put a fridge in a public square, that's it. And we put a couple of fridges and we just told a bunch of people, hey, we started this project and we want to save as much food as we can, so come by and get as much food as you want from the fridge. And the way it works is that we have volunteers that help us every day to pick up food from various places like supermarkets, bakeries. So it's really wonderful to see it's something that could work potentially in a lot of cities. We are giving a display to people that can interact with the fridge, what food waste means and how it can potentially be reused and redistributed. Because a lot of people come up and they are like, they're shocked that there is food that would otherwise be thrown away in there, and it looked almost perfect, almost just out of the supermarket.
The term permaculture was coined by some Australians who after Second World War was looking into a more permanent agriculture, which is where the word comes from. Being permanent, meaning sustainable, feeding itself. For example, that the garden feeds itself with the nutrients it needs. So our setup here as a rooftop farm, one can say we're in a complete concrete jungle. The nature we are left with is the soil, the sun, the rain, and that's it. When you have a huge production of vegetables, you need a lot of nutrients input. So we have a compost system and we have chickens. So with our leftover foods, everything gets thrown to the chicken coop. And that's how we have our circular system.
We need to do something, both on the state level and also on the local level, like what we do in Actory and as students. Make projects that are small but can have an effect to influence other people at other universities in other countries or other campuses to do similar things and be inspired by each other. The main project I'm doing is working on a swapping station that's called Rådbutikken. And that is actually a place where you can donate your things that you don't need or use, and then you can take things from the swap for free. It's a very easy way to do something in your everyday life as a student that's good for the climate.
That's something really generic that people say a single move can move mountains, but it's actually true. Because I have seen one person collect a kilogram of trash, but I've seen 49,000 people doing the same. So in the end now we're close to 80 tons of trash that we collected, and it's just incredible to see how much can be done if we actually just put our fingers down and start doing instead of talking.
We're in the climate resilience area, which was designed for this neighborhood after a huge flooding in 2011, where there was meters and meters of water, and they realized it's all a concrete mess. We need to make some sinks for rainwater. We need to open up some of the tarmac, plant more trees. You should have a look around. They've made little paths so you feel like you're in a jungle, even though you're only in a 20 square meter space.
I think the most important part for me, if you want to go out and do something, and I really hope you want to, is to not put the fault on yourself and to not make this a question of if you're good enough to, shop the right things or eat the right things or be perfect. I think that idea of perfectionism often shuts us down, and it's a tool to shut us down. What I would really love to see is people go organize. I think it's super important also to get together with some people to do this with, because if you're alone in it, I feel at least that normality has this force to drag you in and make you think that you're wrong, or okay, maybe I'm also just too much. But no, you're not. Please have someone around you where you can help each other remind each other of that.
What is special about the folk high schools is that we don't have any exams, we don't have any curriculum. So when I was part of the group that started the course, we sat with a blank piece of paper and then we kind of go into what are the most critical and most exciting questions to look into and to discuss with the students. So we both have young climate activists, researchers, biologists, authors coming here and then telling about their practice and how they involve. We always end on a note on how they nurture their hope for a more sustainable future, because in my opinion, hope is something that we need to carry with us. Hope is something that we can find by meeting people who are involved in creating the future that we believe in, whereas optimism is something that you can kind of more calculate on. And when you take a look at the IPCC reports, or you kind of open your eyes to how the climate is changing just around us and how much biodiversity we are failing to save, then it's really difficult not to become pessimistic about the future. But what we do here on Co-op is to always talk about where to find hope and how to get involved.
One thing that gives me hope is the rise in discussions around this very real phenomenon of eco-anxiety, climate grief. They are not just potential mobilizing feelings, but also represent this deep relationship that so many of us actually do have with the rest of nature. And I think it was Jennifer Atkinson says, "You don't grieve things you don't love." So in recognizing the centrality of love and care, that is a partner to experience of grief, we can use that to take actions that bring hope. Because I have seen from myself that every time I engage with others in trying to do something, make a change, I get a lot out of it. And sure, we can have setbacks and we can feel frustrated, but it is through the doing and it's through the relationships that I find all the hope I need.
There is so much to hope for and fight for. I mean, both because climate change is a cumulative issue. Every time we slow it down, we won, right? I mean, maybe we won years or we won lives, and that matters.
I think it's really wonderful to see how much cities are growing in terms of these kind of projects, like community gardens are in a lot of places, and community fridges, community kitchens, and things that are done in common to cook food and share food with other people. So I think if you look around and if you Google community garden in, I don't know, Barcelona or wherever you are, I'm sure you're gonna find something that can fit with maybe your ideas of being more in contact with nature and creating more spaces for people to thrive and to just be happier. I think at the end of the day, the more food we share and the more food we make and the more food we grow, I think the happier we are.
It's kind of getting back to those very basic joys of the smell of a leek when you pull it up in winter, even when it's pissing down with rain, and then also our son, that he gets to grow up in a really lovely place like this where he can go and pick strawberries and feed things to the chickens and say hi to the cows. And I don't know, just those really simple joys of producing something. Like when we got the chickens for the first time, there's never been chickens on the farm before, and then there's sort of that feeling of autonomy and agency that you just get the chickens and you feed the chickens and then you have eggs to sell. That was very thrilling.
You can easily forget that the reason why we're in this fight and why we're doing this is because of hope. On a daily basis you have all kinds of political stuff that you need to do, or posts that you need to put up, or blah, 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 and you can easily forget what it is that we're actually fighting for.
I think I'm generally pretty optimistic. Like I say, it goes up and down, and I think that does with most people working with this heightened awareness of the problems and the issues we face. But I also see so many sort of positive changes. It's just a kind of a matter of achieving critical mass. The more people who want something to change, the sooner it will change. And we've seen that throughout history of, everyone suddenly starts boycotting something or protesting in something, it'll change. Where if everyone just sort of sits there and be like, it's useless, we can't do anything, then we're fucked, basically. I won't correct that one. I think we should say that.
On Saturday we have World Cleanup Day. All over the world, a lot of people come together that day and clean up. And even though it's a simple act, it's really nice to know that you're not the only one who cares. You can also use that sense of community to kind of push our politicians. I mean, politicians, they need to be elected and re-elected. So that sense of standing together, a lot of people wanting the same thing, they do hear it. It's not always they listen, but they do hear it.
what we have to do to try to find hope or feeling like we're improving the world we live in is what's right in front of us. For someone who has skills within a certain field, and it can be economics, or it can be cleaning, or you can be a hairdresser, or you can be so many things, but you have to say, okay, what can I do to contribute to bettering something? And that's maybe getting rid of some of the chemical stuff you use as a hairdresser, or it's maybe having a look at the backyard right where you live. And even though it's only a tiny little patch or 2 pots in your courtyard, you just grow that 1 kale plant and then you've done something. And when you have that feeling of hopelessness, you're like, I don't even know where to get started, it's too much. That's when I think you just have to reverse it and be like, what do I do every day? Who do I talk to every day? Everyone is touching something in their environment. Even if it's only the place they live, well, then you can do something nice there.
We can't blindly hope that things will work out if we just continue down this path. So a critical hope or a constructive hope or an action-based hope is all about thinking toward the future. I mean, hope itself is an act of recognizing and building a relationship to the future, but then it's about what will it take to get there.
The future we want is a plastic-free society, and that is a vision. And we really like this idea about visions because it creates a positive narrative about where we want to go instead of like always talking about where we don't want to be.
I would love to see an agriculture that produces and consumes more locally and that is distributed between more people, and where the producers get a fair share and can actually live. Where we can bring back looking up to farmers instead of devaluating them a lot, as I think now, because they're some of the most important people, right?
We really lack an imaginary for thinking the world of tomorrow.
In 100 years, I would like all of the world to be able to wake up to a nice, clean air with the nature that close by, that they can breathe from and go into and nap in and so on.
People are working a lot to depollute soils and waters, but it's really nice because then biodiversity is coming back. Of course, it's a bit more annoying because there's more mosquitoes coming, for example. But people can really appreciate that because they knew that we were really close by, like, to destroy all life on Earth. So it's great.
We host Utopia exercises where we start out with a Utopia dream, where we have 10 minutes of dreaming about what the perfect society would look like. So how would we transport ourselves around? How would we work? What would we eat? How would we live?
The students are right now going into groups where they're going from these abstract, beautiful utopian thoughts that they will make into actions in different ways that will take place at the school here. So right now they're still in this abstract dream phase where they, for example, want to create a society where everyone belongs or where everyone feels a purpose or meaning, and now trying to find a concrete action that they can do that makes sense for the rest of the students to take part of.
Our project is called Plenty of Plants. I think it started with Thomas. He had like a dream of how there was a lot of plants in the area that he was, and how his utopia was filled with a lot of like gardens and forests and all that. And I think a lot of people can relate to that feeling. And what we're going to do is that we're going to build a sustainable garden, and then we'll try to make every student have their own plant, and then we poetically cement our memories here in the garden and then pass on the project to the following generations of students coming up here, and hopefully make this place into a more beautiful place containing plants and love for plants, I guess.
This Utopia travel, as we call it, is a way of activating all these dreams for a completely different society. And then afterwards we kind of want to take some of these ideas and then try to link them to the society that we know today. So for example, if what we want to eat in the perfect society is only locally grown vegetables, then it would be really interesting to make kind of the food plan for the school here, where we only eat or buy vegetables grown locally. So in that way we kind of take the utopian ideas and then try to act upon them, because I think we really need to activate dreaming of a completely different society before we can actually change the society that we are embedded in now.